Hello there, gamers, simmers, and pilots. I am the KILR Gamer. We are back here with the KILR Gamers World Tour featuring Microsoft Flight Simulator 3 in 2024. How about that? Is anyone else going to do it? Don't know. There might be. But I've got a lot of flights under my belt when it comes to Flight Simulator 3 or any of these classic ones in regards to videos that are made. So it'd be interesting to see if anyone else out there does any retro flight simulating. But let's go ahead and talk about where we're at and where we're going. So we are right here at Toledo Express. And we're going to be flying over here to Cleveland. It's not too far. And it's going to be right along the coastline. And the other two simulators, what we did is we would tune into Waterville and then take that and connect up with the dryer. We would do this. No, we wouldn't do that. But what I was thinking of this time was I'm going to grab another color here, is come up here, kind of like do a VFR flight. Do something a little different. We're going to come up, we're going to fly, well, hold on, we're not flying from the VOR, we're flying from here, from Toledo. And we're going to go along the coast. Like this. We'll just fly along the coast and we'll use dryer as a reference so that way we know how close we are. And we will land somewhere around here. Somewhere around here. All right. Have you figured it out yet? All right. Well, let's get going. So we're going to want to tune in 113.6 to nav 1. There we go. We're all set. We'll go ahead and get the engine started. All right, listen to that pretty sound of the engine. Sounds good. Looks good. It must be good, right? Oh, hey, I don't want the map going on there. So the runway that is up there in front of us is the one we're going to take. So we're going to move forward, and then we'll turn to the right. Like we're barely moving here. It's 2024. Are you folks all ready and excited for a whole new year of retro flying? We got the Commodore 64 and the Commodore Amiga, along with FS3. They're all going to be flying the same flights, mostly. FS3 can at least go into scenery just 12 area. The Commodore 64 can't, but the Amiga can. And then you've got all the Western scenery discs that are not available on the Amiga, but are unavailable on Commodore 64. So yeah, it's a mixed bag of tricks. It is a mixed bag of tricks, but we'll try to do what we can. And then there is a separate series that I'm live streaming on Twitch whenever I can, and that's the Flight Simulator 3 Coast to Coast Tour. And already did one from beginning to end with the Commodore 64 and SubLogic Flight Simulator 2. And I wanted to do that with Flight Simulator 3. How come we're not... Because I'm not hitting the right key for brakes. Like, we're not stopping. Why are we not stopping? I'm hitting the space bar and it's not working. It works on SubLogic. It doesn't work on this one. Go figure. Or does it? Okay. Let's get our trim set. Oh, wrong keys. I get a little confused because I'm not sure which platform I'm playing on here. All right. Let's stay on the runway. How about that? And here we go. Raise the landing gear. We're flying over Toledo right now. And believe me, I've been traveling from coast to coast just on a semi-truck, and Toledo looks just like that. There's a lot of yellow. Oh, I forgot. We have autopilot on this. Let's set it. There we go. Now, one thing I mentioned on the version for the Commodore Amiga, I was pretty sure, but wasn't exactly sure. I wouldn't know exactly for sure until I played this one, but I never really paid attention to it before. But the, when you go to the menu options in the Commodore Amiga, it continues to play. It doesn't pause. And I believe that's just part of the multitasking abilities that the Amiga is able to do. But yeah, you click on the menu option here, it pauses it. And it continues to pause it in Flight Simulator, like, at least all the way through FS9. I think FSX does it too. I don't think the pausing, it's possible that it didn't. I know there's an option where it says pause on task reswitch. Or when it loses focus or something like that. No, the menu options, that's right, because if you were to right-click your mouse to use one of the menu options, it would pause. And I think it did that all the way, at least through FS9. It didn't stop doing that until like FSX or P3D, one of the two, I don't remember. But the Amiga was able to do it many, many years ago. I think the Amiga 500 came out around, let's see, the Amiga 1000 I think came out around 1987. So the Amiga 500 came out around 1988, 1989, somewhere around there. Should probably look it up, huh? Why don't we? Okay, I was wrong. Amiga 500 was 1987. I kept thinking 1987 about something, but I thought that was when the Amiga first came out. That's when the Amiga 500 came out. I know it was brand new when I bought my Amiga 500, and I was big into Flight Simulator, SubLogic Flight Simulator with the Commodore 64, so when I saw that it was available for the Amiga, oh, you better believe I wanted to get in on that action. So I think the Amiga 1000 came out around 1985 then. Yep. Amiga 1000 was released in 1985. This is interesting. Okay, so here's a little bit of history for you. The Commodore Amiga 1000, which was the first one, came out in 1985. SubLogic Flight Simulator 2 for the Amiga came out in 1986. The Amiga 500 came out in 1987. And just for comparison, what the heck is it trying to say? I'm like, when did FS3 come out? SubLogic Flight Simulator 3 for Amiga was released in 1988. No, it wasn't. Okay, so it corrected itself. ChatGPT. Because, of course. So yeah, Microsoft Flight Simulator 3 came out in 1988. So, if you compare the flights between the Commodore 64, the Amiga, and then Flight Simulator 3, you'll notice that this has a very similar look to the Amiga. So the Amiga version and the Atari ST version paved the way for Microsoft Flight Simulator 3. 2 years later. And then what? Not even a year after that is when Flight Simulator 4 came out. So they were able to take things from the Amiga version and improve on it. Kind of. The sound was not one of them. But, ironically, Flight Simulator 4, when you get the sound graphics enhancement upgrade or whatever, the engine sound for the Cessna sounds just like the one from the Amiga. But then they have other sound effects added as well, which unfortunately the Amiga didn't have, and I wish it did. It's just, you know, when you're flying on the Amiga, something just feels like it's missing when you raise the landing gear and you don't hear anything. Or you raise and lower the flaps and you don't hear anything. You know, it's kind of like, I want there to be a sound of something, you know? And yes, I know SubLogic Flight Simulator 2, okay, they were, okay, the Amiga and Commodore 64 were called the same thing, but that didn't have sound effects for landing gear or flaps or anything either. So it's consistent, at least, but still the capability of what the Amiga could do, and there are some programs that really showcased the Commodore Amiga. There should have been more sounds. There really should have been. There's no reason why they couldn't have, I don't know. Whenever you land, it stops the engine sound, and then you hear the, you know, screech. So it's possible that maybe the only way they could have done it was to cut the engine sound so you could hear the landing gear go up. I don't know. Maybe they thought that was too distracting. But I don't know. I mean, the Amiga had Was it 4 stereo channels, or was it only 2? I keep thinking it was 4 stereo channels. But if you did mono, you could have like 8 different sounds, 8 different instruments that would go between speakers. And that's how some of the game companies back in the day, Psygnosis comes to mind, even Cinemaware, you would hear multiple instruments, and that's how they pulled it off, because they weren't playing the sounds in stereo, they were playing the separate instruments on the different sound channels, and it was going, back and forth, and so it had a stereo effect, and it was really clever. Very, very clever for the day. Man, the Amiga, those were fun days. Let's see. How many sound channels on Amiga? I was right, 4 hardware sound channels. So that's 4 stereo. You have 4 on the left, 4 on the right. So if you wanted to have one, and I think this is how you'd have to listen to it through headphones. If you listen to some of the music that was on the Amiga, you probably had like one main track that was in stereo on both, and then they had separate instruments that would kind of go back and forth between the different sound channels. So it would kind of but it gave it a much more unique and interesting sound. Isn't that funny though? 2 years before this simulator right here, a flight simulator had a Cessna sound. 2 years before this came out. So it took the PC more than 2 years to catch up to what the Amiga was already doing. Because FS4 came out in 1989. I think it was November. Okay, so Flight Simulator 4 came out on November of 1989. Now it had the same sound, the same PC speaker sound as Flight Simulator 3 does. Which means oh man, what was the name of the company? There we go, Sound Graphics Adapter. It was released in 1990, so yeah. What month? March. 4 months after the release of Flight Simulator 4, they finally had the sound and graphics upgrade, or adapter, I think that's what it says, which had the engine sound from the Amiga on this. I love ChatGPT because I can get specific with my questions. So I ask, how many months in between the Amiga Flight Simulator 2 release and the SGA sound graphics adapter for Flight Simulator 4? How many months in between? 3 years and 6 months. It took 3.5 years for the PC to catch up to the Amiga in terms of Flight Simulator 2. Or Flight Simulator. Crazy, isn't it? And we're talking about a computer that was running everything off of a floppy disk. Alright, it was a floppy disk. It wasn't installed on a hard drive. It was a floppy disk. And it was able to multitask. You could click on the menu buttons and it wouldn't pause the game. That's some pretty cool stuff right there. So what are we flying over? That is a good question. This should be Sandusky, and I believe what we just flew over, or what we're about to fly over, is Catawba Island. Maybe. I think Sandusky, Ohio is like, I think that's Sandusky, Ohio right there. I don't know, it's supposed to be like right here on the corner. I didn't want to do this, but let's open up to map, because when I do this it's gonna pause. It doesn't do that on the Amiga. And pull up the map display. Okay, so what we're flying over right now, okay, that's Sandusky. Do you see on the map there where the crosshairs are at? We're right here. That's Sandusky. Cool. Now to turn it off, we gotta pause the game again. You know, if they could just combine the Amiga version with what they did with Flight Simulator 4, that'd be such an awesome Awesome simulator. But no, the things that could have been. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Now we got about 28 miles to the Vor dryer. The airport is right after that. We can probably just continue on this course too. I guess it would have been quicker the other way. Okay, so in order to get to the Vor, we're going to have to turn to a heading of 108. Well, we're not going to worry about that just yet. Let's get up to this point right here, and then we'll make that turn. There's like a flashing white dot over here. That was my phone, by the way. Like, I didn't recognize the number. Like, I don't know who you're calling. Got the wrong number. Alright, we'll go ahead and make that course correction now. There we go. We're on our way. So to complete a thought that I was talking about much earlier, I was talking about the Coast to Coast Flight Simulator 3 tour. I completed it with Flight Simulator 2 for the Commodore 64, going from the West Coast to the East Coast. Something that I did back in the day and hadn't done, in modern times, and I don't think anyone's done a video series that chronicles that, so I may be the first one to actually have a full recording, broken into parts, obviously, but a full recording of actually flying with the Commodore 64 and using all the necessary scenery discs to get from the west to the east. Is there a lot to see? Well, no. There's not much in terms of graphics back in those days. But with some imagination, it can be a little fun. So, with Flight Simulator 3, I'm going from the east to the west. And since FS3 has got scenery disc number 12, which the Commodore 64 does not have, I opted to come up with a different flight plan that would start in scenery disc number 12, which was in, it didn't start in Maine, but it started in the New England area, I think, and I've just got a whole different path. It's going to be a much longer tour. And those are longer flights, whereas these here are, more like they're shorter flights, doing some airport hopping. Okay, so I think that's Cleveland over there to the left. I'm looking at the Flight Simulator map. There's an airport called Lost Nation. I wonder if it's still called that. Willoughby, Ohio. I don't think it's called that anymore. It might be called Lake County Executive Airport. It is located at 1969 Lost Nation Road in Willoughby, Ohio. Lake County Executive Airport. KLNN. But apparently, we take our time machine and go backwards to, you know, the SubLogic and Microsoft Flight Simulator 3 and 4 eras. It was called the Lost Nation Airport. That's Cleveland. Whew. I have to turn down the sound on my headphones. Oh, that sound is really... I hear it after a while and your ears are just kind of like, ugh. Buzz, 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 buzz in the eardrum. Anybody remember that song? It's from the group Wire. Buzz, 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 buzz in the eardrum. Came out around 1990. It was when alternative music was like in its infancy. Okay, that looks like Cleveland. So we had like smaller little cities outside of Cleveland that we're passing over here. Yeah, right over here. Yeah, this isn't Cleveland. Now that's up there. So we should be able to see the airport here soon. And there it is. Okay, autopilot is off. Whoa. Alright, landing gear down. Yeah, flaps down 1 notch. Right now it's a little tricky to see where the runways are at and how they're, you know, which way they're pointing and stuff. I kind of have an idea, but I'm not completely sure. Okay, I'm having a better idea of where the runways are at. I can see like a little nub sticking out here and another one sticking out right about there. And those are the runways. They're at an angle. And that's about what we were landing on the other 2 simulators. The same ones. Yep, 7 right. I believe that's the runway we landed on. looks like that's on the other two simulators. I think that's what we're going to be landing on here. If you can see it, you can see it. Use your imagination. We're beginning to line up. We're a little off here. We're really off here. Why is that? Shouldn't be. We're a bit high on our approach. This is where you got to use your instruments. You're like, oh, how much further we got left to go? Well, the altitude of the airport is around 700. This one's hard to line up for some reason. There we go. I was afraid it was going to nose down really quickly. It didn't, thankfully. And the fuel box is right over there. Just I saw it. We'll take this imaginary taxiway here. Wait, there's a road right over there. See, it looks like a black road that you drive on, and there's a couple of, telephone towers. Or electric towers or something. They're telephone poles, right? And a big white building with black trimming. Yep, that was 1988 for you. Consider yourselves educated. That's it. Whew. Now that my ears are kind of ringing a little bit. Welcome to Cleveland, Ohio, to the Cleveland International Hopkins. Was it Cleveland Hopkins International Airport? We're here. So thank you for joining me on this flight. And if you haven't already subscribed and clicked the notification bell, be sure you do so you get notified of that future flight simulator content, which I get out on Flight Simulator Friday, pretty much dedicating Fridays for Flight Simulator. There might be some things that happen on Sim Saturday, but for Flight Simulator, Friday's going to be the thing. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Have a killer, awesome day.